Hello, everyone. Welcome to Durrett's Take. Let's get started. So it's been a while since the last posted. Sorry, I've been pretty busy. I've received two different jobs. One being a sports writer, even though I haven't started that one yet. Another one working for my dad. So that's why I haven't been able to post a podcast recently. And I'll probably be, especially since now it's summertime, NBA season's almost over, and I don't cover baseball and a bunch of any other sports. I won't be doing a lot of podcasts per se in this summer until probably around preseason time for NFL is when I'll probably start getting back into trying to doing it more often again. But as of right now, about once a week, maybe twice a week is probably expected, especially since my schedule's getting busier. So let's get started. So I haven't been able to talk since the Hawks and Bucks series ended. So now I'm going to go over, as you know, my solutions on how the Hawks can improve for next season. So if I'm the Hawks, I like what I saw from many of my young players, including Cam Reddish. And I also liked what I saw from, obviously, Trae Young before his injury. The role players were inconsistent, but overall, I feel like they were kind of fine. Um, I feel like the first step for them to getting better is, officially hiring Nate McMillan, which I know they just did the other day. And then I got to give credit to Nate McMillan, by the way. He changed my opinion about him because for the longest time I thought he was a coach where he can build a nice culture, get you to the playoffs, but do nothing in the playoffs. But now that he's done this, he's changed my opinion. Now he's never had like a true superstar until Trae Young. He does have some good players, even all-star players like Sabonis, but he's never had a true all-star until Trae Young. So maybe that's the difference there. But I changed my opinion about him as a coach now. He's pretty good. Um, I think the Hawks are just one all-star away from being a true title contender. Because Trae, even though he was an all-star this year, he's been an all-star in the past, and he's going to be an all-star in the future. So it's about that second all-star. Now, there's John Collins who wants that max money and think he deserves that. And if you sign him to that, you have to be projecting. Okay, he's going to be an all-star for us mostly every year, if not multiple all-star. So if you feel that way, fine. But I think John Collins is not a second best player on the championship team. In fact, he may not even be a third best player on the championship. Now, he's definitely a fourth. Like he's definitely a good player, but he's not the second best. So if I'm the Hawks, I try to give him a second banana. Um, whether that's I don't know trading. Like I know we talk about Bradley Beal trading the Lakers, trading the Mavs, and all that. But let's say for some reason the Hawks can go after and get Bradley Beal. That 1-2 combo right there is very deadly, and that could make you become more of a championship contender. I would. So there's plenty of options there. They just need to figure out what can do because as of right now, um, Brooklyn's obviously better than them when fully healthy. We just saw Milwaukee over them. Philadelphia, even if they give Ben Simmons, I'm not sure what's going to happen there, but I still feel like they'll be better than Atlanta. And then I feel like the Heat and Celtics both are expected to make big moves, and if they can, then they will jump over Atlanta if Atlanta stays pat. So therefore, Atlanta must make a move to kind of be in the discussion with Milwaukee and Brooklyn. Um, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over my top 10 college football games with the most impact. So what do I mean by this? I don't mean the most interesting, because let's say week 2, for example, Washington, Michigan. That's kind of interesting. How is Michigan kind of bounce back from that bad year last year? As Washington was actually supposed to go to the Pac-12 championship game last year, but didn't. Like, are they still going to be any good? And there's other good games like Oklahoma versus Texas, but I don't think Texas is a playoff contender or even like a top 10 type of team. So therefore, I'm not really going to put that as the most impactful game per se, even though it's a rivalry game. So what I'm talking about specifically is what's your stance on you making the playoffs or at least you being in the top 10? Because if you can at least crack the top 10, then it shows you were close enough. Like you were close enough to trying to make the playoffs. So something like that is what I'm going for. So let's get started. So the number one most impactful game will be Georgia versus Clemson. I doubt there's any dispute there. Oh, and one thing to keep in mind. So I'm not counting conference changing games because obviously if a Georgia and Alabama can meet up in a conference changing game or Ohio State and Wisconsin meet up in conference changing game, obviously that's important. But we don't know that as of yet. So therefore, I'm not going to count those. But anyways, so back to Georgia versus Clemson. This should be the game of the year. Even though Clemson will have a home field advantage. I think Georgia is set up here to try to win this game. They bring back JT Tanos, who's a big quarterback for them, because once JT Tanos started for Georgia the rest of the way, he did really good for them, if not going undefeated the rest of the way. So I like what I saw for them. Now they do lose some defense pieces in the draft, but they're always going to reload in defense. That's going to be smart for you. And they return a lot of people on offense. So I like what Georgia brings to the table here. Now for Clemson, you lost Trevor Lawrence, you lost Travis Dean, you lost Amari Rodgers, and there was another number 2 wide receiver that they lost as well. Forgot his name. And I know we saw 2 games for DJ, the Clemson quarterback, Iguale. I don't know if I pronounced him correctly. And he has some talent. We saw it. He hung up 41, in Notre Dame and beat Boston College, in a high scoring affair. He can play, but he ain't no Trevor Lawrence. And as we saw last year, the Clemson offensive line against big time opponents like a Bama or Ohio State, whatever, they're not in Notre Dame to this day. They're not as good as they once were. And the defense is surely not as good as it once was. I know there's still Brent Venables there. They still have talent, I'm not denying that, but they're definitely not as good as they once were back when they won the championship. So if you're Georgia here, this is your chance to take advantage, if you will. Because if you're Georgia, if you lose this game, you have to go run the table in the SEC to go to the playoffs, and that's going to be very hard. Going through multiple teams like a Florida or Auburn and stuff like that. That's going to be very hard to do. Now, if you're Clemson, if you lose, it's going to be very hard for yourself to make the playoffs as well, because we can pencil in the SEC champ, pencil in the Big Ten champ, because they'll mostly have just one loss. And then we can mostly pencil in the Big 12 champion, because I feel like Oklahoma is going to have a very good year. If for some reason one less Iowa State gets in, I feel like they deserve to get in, because they would have beaten Oklahoma. But let's just say either of those scenarios happen. Well, I would take them over one loss ACC champion Clemson. Or then let's say Georgia wins and then they go on and their only loss ends up being to Alabama SEC championship game. Well, then because of head-to-head, take Georgia over Clemson. So Clemson, and then also Notre Dame's a wild card and stuff like that. So there's a lot of disadvantage for Clemson to lose games. That's why it's very important if they want to keep their playoff streak alive to win this game at home. That's why it's my biggest game of the year. Second is Ohio State versus Indiana. You may be surprised to see a game involving Indiana this high up, but it's true. They should be good once again like they were last year. They lost by a touchdown to Ohio State last year at Columbus with Fields as the QB. So whoever wins this game is going to win the Big Ten championship, in my opinion. Yes, that means Penn State and Michigan are not playoff contenders, in my opinion. So if the winner gets to the Big Ten championship game, I think they'll beat whoever comes out of the opposite division, whether it's a Northwestern, Wisconsin, whatever, and therefore likely to be the playoffs. So that's why this is a big game, because whoever wins this game will most likely make the playoffs. At the very least, go to the Big Ten title game. Third, Iowa State versus Oklahoma. So this is a game we may see twice this season, who knows, but some analysts think Iowa State's a dark horse to win the Big 12 this year and make the playoffs. I think they can get into the same position they were last year. They're relevant top 10, but when it came to that Big 12 championship game, they couldn't get over the hump against Oklahoma. So I feel like that's going to be kind of be the case last year. Because Oklahoma, remember, Rattler was playing elite level towards the end of the year. The defense was actually making strides, playing like a legit defense versus a normal Big 12 defense. And I think they could actually make a legit championship run this year instead of just a playoff appearance and nothing more. So I think this is going to be a huge game. Oregon versus Ohio State. Since this is a Week 2 game, this will be a big tell to see what Ryan Day without Justin Fields will look like on offense. Now they bring back key wide receivers and stuff, which will help. But losing Justin Fields is a big deal because I feel like he's one of the best Ohio State quarterbacks to ever put on a uniform, if not the best one. Now, we don't expect Ohio State to be exactly the same as they were last year. But can they at least get the job done? Can at least be competent? Because if so, then that could be enough potential win than the Big Ten. Now, for Oregon, you see, they won the Pac-12 again last year. Good for you. But your offense was hit and miss, and your defense was, for the most part, very horrible. So can you get back into the playoff discussion now, like you're kind of near Justin Herbert's year, or is this going to be another good but not great season? Alabama, Florida. Again, Week 3 here. An early test to see how Florida looked like without Kyle Trask. We've seen a small sample size of the replacement. I forgot his name, but he is more of a running quarterback, so we don't know much about his arm and ability to throw accurately. Especially since the defense was horrible last season, I expect Florida to take a step back this year. But they can upset Alabama, at home. Then that changes everything there. That's like, okay, now they're in the playoff discussion, along with Georgia and Bama still. That was the only loss Bama had. And then for Alabama, yeah, Miami could give you tests in week one, but Miami, we saw their three toughest games last year. They got annihilated all three games. So I expect Bama to annihilate them. But, I mean, against a SEC type of defense and offense, what is Bryce Young, if he starts potentially bringing to the table, I'd be kind of interested to see what they do there. Now, I don't think they're going to be like LSU, where they go from championship to losing record, but can Alabama potentially take a step back this year? This will be the year to do it with a bunch of young players and new offensive coordinator and all that, so this will kind of be interesting to see what happens here. Georgia versus Florida. I mean, this always determines who goes to the SEC title game, and therefore has a chance to make the playoffs. Hopefully, this will be a better game than last year. USC Notre Dame. Okay, for the fans who wanted to say USC is back, they were close to saying it last year, but when you lost the Pac-12 title game to a 500 record Oregon team who had a bunch of close wins against teams, now COVID is not an excuse anymore. You got to prove it. The quarterback USC, Keenan Slovis, he's a junior now. Been in the system multiple years. Heisman hopeful. What can he do? For Notre Dame, how do you fare without Ian Book, who's one like your winningest quarterback of all time, and you lose some key stars? How do you do? Are you still in the playoff discussion, or is this a retool/rebuild type of year? Cincinnati versus Indiana/Notre Dame. That's where I'm going to combine those two games into one here. Now, you may be laughing and saying that's why it's a group of five teams in Cincinnati here. The college football playoff committee is never going to let a group of five in team here. Well, their schedule was concerned last year and is still concerned conference-wise this year. But now the non-conference this year, this is a great test. Indiana and Notre Dame are both top 10 caliber teams. Even back when UCF was having their undefeated seasons in their non-conference schedule, excluding the bowl game, they weren't playing top 10 caliber non-conference opponents. So that's why this could be a different scenario here, because I doubt they're going to run the table against Indiana and Notre Dame. But let's say they do, and then obviously win the rest of their games. Well, bam, you got to consider them for the playoffs at this point. They just beat Indiana and Notre Dame, two top 10, 15 type of teams here. That'd be pretty impressive. Especially, let's say they beat Indiana and Indiana runs the Big Ten table and gets to the playoffs. Like, that'd be pretty impressive there. Cincinnati, they returned Desmond Ridder, their quarterback, their coach Luke Fickell, mostly a lot of players, both offense and defense. This is a very talented team returning once again. Now, they could be in the year 6 favorite once again, but I feel like they want to set the bar differently. They want to get to the playoff this time. And if you run the table here, you can definitely be in that discussion. 9, Ole Miss versus Alabama. So this spot belongs to who I think will be the second place team in Bama's own division. And this year, I think it's Ole Miss. A&M lost their 4-year starter, Kellen Mond, new quarterback. LSU still has question marks all around. Auburn, new head coach. You obviously don't trust Mississippi State or Arkansas. Plus, Ole Miss gave Bama fits last year compared to all the other SEC teams besides Florida. So I think this game will determine who wins the SEC West here, in my opinion. So that's why it's an important game to kind of shape up the playoff race. Last but not least, you may laugh at this, but the Holy War, Utah versus BYU. Again, so BYU plays Arizona, which should be a win to start off the season. But then you face Utah here, and then you got Arizona State, Virginia, Baylor, USC. So no more cupcakes like last year. So will last year prove to be just a one-hit wonder because of the schedule, or can you succeed once again? And if you can have obviously undefeated here, or even potentially one loss here, then you can truly be in the playoff debate here. And then for Utah, don't count them out. They returned everyone on defense, including some people they could have left early for the draft. They recruit everyone on defense, mostly everyone on offense, and then they get an upgrade in quarterback, assuming Charlie Brewer, the graduate transfer from Baylor, starts, who led Baylor to a Big 12 championship game once. Knowing that, this Utah team could be like the Utah team back 2 years ago, where they went to the Pac-12 title game. All I had to do was win that game to make the playoffs. So I feel like that's going to be that type of team this year. So that's why this could be a potential playoff factor here. And this honorable mentions are like Miami, Alabama, like I mentioned. North Carolina versus Notre Dame. North Carolina is supposed to be meeting Clemson, almost like an ACC championship game like that. Could be a good game there for Notre Dame. Also, Notre Dame for Wisconsin have a bounce back year after a mediocre year last year, stuff like that. But those are the top 10 games that I have, according to me. So thank you very much for listening to my podcast today. Please subscribe to my channel, tell everyone about me. Thank you very much, and you all have a wonderful day.